If you've ever opened a set of instructions in a course and thought, what the hell am I supposed to do? Then you're not alone. People accidentally write shitty instructions all the time, even with the best of intentions. This video is going to talk about why we do that and how to fix it. I'm Dr. Catrina Mitchum, and I have been designing and redesigning courses online since 2009. So in a previous life, I was a technical writer, and so instructions are a topic that are near and dear to my heart. So why do we write poor instructions, even when we care about the outcomes, even when we really know our shit? There's a few reasons. One, and probably the most common, is that you understand the topic so well, you forget what it's like to be new, and so you skip steps. It can be hard to get out of your own head and sort of where you are now, because some of these are steps that you do without thinking. They become kind of automatic for you. So it can be easy to forget what they are. I had a client who was moving their workbook to Google, and I had to talk her through how to do the downloading and copying pieces so that she could walk her clients through it. Her instructions were perfect. They were better than mine. And that's because it was a skill she had just learned. It wasn't something she was trying to remember what the steps are for someone that doesn't know it as well. The second reason that we unintentionally write shitty instructions is that we're afraid of being too prescriptive or afraid to be seen as talking down to someone, right? Nobody wants to make someone else feel stupid. And that can come from a lot of places. That can come from having been talked down to in the past, or being in a course where the level isn't where you are, right? You're more advanced than what the course is. It can kind of feel awkward to give instructions. If you feel like you're breaking it down too much, we might assume that others see things as obvious and skip those steps because they're obvious to us. And imposter syndrome plays a pretty big part here too, right? Some of this is about taking ownership over the expertise and experience that you have. This next one I am guilty of. I sometimes don't break things down enough because I don't like to micromanage. And that can sometimes feel like micromanaging, right? Breaking things down into very small steps can feel like you're micromanaging, but you're not. You're giving enough instruction for someone to do the thing. And that is what makes good instructions. There are ways that you can break it down clearly without making someone feel dumb. And I'll cover that in the second half of the video. Another reason why we unintentionally write shitty instructions is that we assume that our clients have knowledge and experience that they don't actually have. And so this kind of goes back to making sure we're creating for the right level, right? For the level that they are at. So remember that assuming makes an ass out of you and me, and it makes your instructions terrible. And this is really the result of how those first two kind of come together, right? But it bears repeating as its own reason because it's a really big assumption that's frequently made. This can be something like assuming everyone has a Gmail account. When you've got someone that doesn't have the Gmail account and you've made that assumption, you are immediately putting up a barrier. Another way that folks unintentionally create shitty instructions is related to forgetting that you are more experienced. It's using jargon without explaining it. And so jargon are words that are usually industry specific. So I talk about course maps a lot, and I always explain course maps because it's an instructional design tool. And so I have to explain what that word is, what it means. And so if you are using those kinds of terms without explaining them, again, you're going to put up another barrier. And this one is particularly difficult to see from the inside because you are an expert. You have learned that language and you know that these words are the fastest way to say the thing. You often have to use more words to say it in a way that is explaining it. So it's okay to use them, but make sure that you're defining them early and often so that folks aren't lost. Okay, and the last reason that I'm going to cover on why we accidentally write shitty instructions is that we're focusing on theory and not action. It's easy to think that information is learning. and that theory automatically leads to practice. So you do need content and information to apply, but instructions need to focus on the doing. And then sprinkling in some why we're doing is also great, but don't fall down the rabbit hole of giving a ton of theory in the instructions. Give them what they need to do the thing. So that leads me to practical fixes. 1, test the instructions with someone who doesn't know the subject. This can be anyone. It doesn't have to be someone that wants to learn the thing from you. It can be anybody that doesn't know how to do the thing or hasn't done the thing or hasn't heard you talk about it a lot. Sometimes other people in our lives can be a little bit too close, and so make it someone that is kind of new to following instructions from you. Can't tell you how critical this piece is. Having someone test those instructions out really helps you find those gaps and those blind spots because they have fresh eyes, right? This is not really about you intentionally making crappy things. It's just like writing. Having a fresh set of eyes and a fresh perspective can help us see the things that we're missing, the gaps that we're not filling, the bridges that we need to create. I was just having this conversation with someone else about copywriting. We need others to point out the things that we're just too close to. When you are picking someone to help you do this, make sure that they're actually going to go through the steps, and then they'll give you feedback when they get stuck or make mistakes. And this works for non-technical stuff too, right? For example, if you're having your folks in your course write out answers to some reflection questions, right? You can get feedback on how clear those questions are, how well they were able to answer them in order to do whatever the next step is. I do also recommend having multiple testers and asking if you can record, of course, because you're just trying to improve the instructions, but always ask. Another practical fix can be including examples, because examples can help bridge gaps in understanding. If you're not explaining something clearly, saying, for example, goes a long way in helping them make that connection to the real world. You might want to show good examples and bad ones depending on what exactly it is you're giving instructions for. And use real world scenarios, because usage examples are so important to connecting it to what their experiences have been or are going to be. Another way to fix this is with step-by-step breakdowns with visual cues. So visual cues can help reduce something called cognitive load. And so cognitive load is this idea that there's only so much information that you can hold and process and do something with at any given point, right? And so too much cognitive load makes everything hard to do. So those step-by-step instructions can reduce cognitive load when you have the visual cues. And it's something like number 1, right? So just even having numbers that guide them through what the steps are. That kind of visual cue can help reduce cognitive load. You'll also want to make sure that those are alt texted so that when a screen reader is reading it, it's also reading things like step 1, because that helps break things down in your brain as you are listening or reading things. You want to make sure that things are consistently formatted. So you can have like bolding for actions or highlights for the don't forget pieces. And so you don't have to do a whole lot of drawing, but things like numbers, arrows, circles, things that help keep the flow of action visual. And my last fix is not really a fix, it's more of a consideration, and that is doing this with respect. You don't want to make someone feel like they're stupid. And how you do that is all about the way you talk about things. So positioning yourself as the guide on the side as opposed to the sage on the stage. Talk about how you are, in this together and using words and phrases that help ease the challenge. So you can say things like, this next bit is going to be really challenging, so we are going to break it down. Or we're getting into these nitty-gritty details because it can be so easy to get lost in the bigger steps. It's not about you, it's about learning. Or I had trouble with this, so we're going to go step by step. Feel free to skip steps that you don't think you need. Right? And so this is about remembering that they're adults, telling them that why you're breaking it down for them, and then also reminding them that they're adults. And if there's a step that they're like, oh yeah, I've already done that, then of course skip it, right? So using a lot of we instead of you, not calling things easy. This can make folks who are struggling feel worse. You can also provide some context. And so this goes back to sprinkling in those whys. Like we're doing this step because it is such a crucial foundational piece. This step matters in the process as its own step because, right? Some of this is about explaining and using right words to create a certain feeling of togetherness and doing this as a partnership. You can also give rabbit hole options if folks want to do a deeper dive. And so this is something that I mentioned in earlier stages of creating courses. You don't have to give them all of the information. Give them the things you know they need to be able to do. And if they're interested in learning more, there's the rabbit hole, or several rabbit holes sometimes. Mention areas of confusion and point to places that they can ask questions. And what this does is it lets them know they're not the only ones that get confused by this. And that's perfectly normal. And having them ask questions in a very specific place makes it so that you know if they have different questions about the same area, and making sure that they can get those questions answered. And lastly, offering multiple paths to the same outcome. So it's not assuming that everyone is coming to you exactly the same. This can be another way to make sure that you're doing this without making people feel like you're talking down to them. Directly related to instructions is that now what feeling? When the next step or transition isn't clear, right? When things feel kind of abrupt, that is exactly what I'm going to cover in the next video. If it's not there, it'll be there next week.